If you think that karma is why you can't manifest, if you believe that your past is blocking your future, I'm about to show you why you have been taught completely wrong. And once you understand what karma actually is, everything changes. So stay with me. Now, most people, they hear the word karma and they think punishment. They think karma is the reason that their life is hard. The reason that they can't manifest, the reason that love, money, or peace just keeps slipping away. And almost always, they've been taught the version of karma that is completely wrong. And if you're new here, I'm Dion Goldsmith and I teach manifestation mechanics, which means that I don't teach you to think positive or repeat empty affirmations. I teach you the actual mechanics of how consciousness shapes reality. And I use ancient Vedic wisdom of over 5,000 years old and modern science. Karma isn't a cosmic scoreboard. It isn't judgment. It isn't God punishing you. Karma is purely momentum. Karma is simply a continuation of previous choices, previous behaviors, previous patterns, and previous states of being. And yes, the ancient Vedic texts say that karma comes from both this life and previous lives. But here's the part that most people never hear. Karma shapes your starting point, not your destiny. Karma influences your circumstances, not outcomes. Karma creates the conditions that you enter, but not the life that you're required to continue. The identity that you stabilize today is stronger than the karma that you walked in with. And that's the real truth behind manifestation. Now, the reason that I'm talking about this now is because that I've lived through karmic momentum myself. I've lived decades repeating the same emotional patterns, the same relationship failures, the same financial struggles, the same inner loops. And then I was forced into my own awakening when I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had to face the reality that some of my life challenges were karmic, some were patterns that I had reinforced for years, and some were consequences of the identity that I kept on returning to. But I also had to face something else. Free will does not disappear. It doesn't disappear just because karma exists. God doesn't trap you in your past. Consciousness isn't limited by old patterns. I manifested healing when I was told that I was too late for treatment. And just before my surgery, after all of my pre-operations were done, and I was about to go under, about to go in the room, my surgical team, they were discussing the procedure. And a surgeon who wasn't even supposed to be there that day overheard their discussion. And he interjected. And what he said not only changed the course of my health outcome, but it prevented me from being disfigured and with life-changing scars around the base of my head and the side of my face. And that surgeon, he wasn't scheduled to be there, but he was. And I manifested stability. After losing money and work because of my cancer, I manifested love after 46 years of choosing the wrong partners. And none of that required my karma to be erased. It required my identity to change. It required my state to be coherent. And it required me to stop repeating the same emotional patterns that kept my old karma alive. If this is already making sense to you, please hit that like button, because that tells me that this message is landing, and I'll create more content that destroys these spiritual myths. Now, here's what you need to understand. You have probably been taught to visualize, to affirm, to speak things into existence, to think positive thoughts, and none of that works consistently. because none of that addresses the real engine behind your life. The ancient texts were very clear. Your actions create karma. But before actions comes identity. And before identity comes samskara. Now, samskaras are impressions in consciousness. They are deep grooves that are created from past experiences in this life and previous lives. Now, some of your patterns, I'm sure you can feel this, they feel ancient because they are. Some fears, some insecurities, some emotional reactions, they feel older than your childhood because they go deeper than this lifetime. And that doesn't mean that you are doomed to repeat them. That doesn't mean that you are trapped by them. It simply means that you need to understand the mechanism so that you can break the loop consciously. So listen to this, samskaras. Samskara creates your tendencies. Karma creates your circumstances. Identity creates your direction. And consciousness, your state, overrides all of it when you learn how to regulate it. Now, I want you to hear this clearly. Manifestation doesn't override karma. Manifestation redirects it. And your free will doesn't delete samskara. Your free will rewires it. When your identity changes, your karma changes direction. When your state stabilizes, your samskaras, they lose their power. When your consciousness becomes coherent, the field, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, responds instantly. And this is why you can get two people with similar karma and they can live completely different lives. This is why somebody that's born into difficulty, they can rise into peace, wealth, love, purpose, stability. Karma sets the stage, but your identity decides the story. And the universe, it responds to identity, not history. So if you're still with me, comment below. I am not my karma. Write it out. Write it on paper if you don't want to comment. What I'm about to show you next is the practical part of how samskaras actually work and why they are the deeper force underneath everything. To understand how to change your karma, first of all, you need to understand samskara, because samskaras are the deep force that are underneath your choices, your emotions, and your automatic reactions. When you react the same way again and again, when you feel drawn to the same type of partner, when you fall into the same emotional state, even though you want to change, that is samskara at work. And it's not because you're flawed, it's not because you are cursed, but because these impressions, they feel familiar to your consciousness. Samskaras are grooves in awareness, and they pull you back into the version of you that matches that groove. This is where most people sabotage manifestation without even realizing it. Samskara, it creates identity. Identity creates expectation, and expectation creates state, and state is what manifests. So if you've been trying to manifest wealth, but your samskaras are built on lack, your state collapses the moment that you see a big bill. If you're trying to manifest love, but your samskaras are built on abandonment, your state collapses the moment someone doesn't reply to a text message. If you're trying to manifest health, but your samskaras are built on fear, your state collapses the moment that you feel a symptom. This is why the images, the affirmations, the visualization techniques, they don't work long term. You're trying to create a new reality while your identity is still being pulled into the old one. But here's the empowering part. Samskaras are not permanent. Samskaras are patterns of consciousness, and consciousness can be trained. You can override a samskara by stabilizing a new identity more consistently than the old pattern. You can dissolve samskara by refusing to emotionally collapse when the pattern triggers. You can rewrite a samskara by choosing a different state in the very moment that an old action rises. And the moment your identity begins to shift, your karma begins to shift with it. Because karma is not fate. Karma is simply the extension of the identity that you return to lifetime after lifetime, day after day, a moment after moment. And modern science is starting to echo this truth. Neuroscience calls samskaras neural patterns. Trauma research, they call them implicit memory. Psychology calls them schemas. Different languages, same truth. You see the world through internal patterns that you carry, and the world responds to the identity that you stabilize. When your inner identity changes, your outer reality changes. And this is why the law of attraction fails for most people, is they try to manifest from the surface. They try to fix their life with images and affirmations, while their samskaras are still transmitting the old signal. And reality always responds to the deeper signal, not the surface effort. Let me explain to you how this actually works moment to moment. Because karma isn't something mystical or distant. Karma is happening inside you every single moment. You experience karma in the split second when something triggers you and you fall into the old identity without thinking. You experience karma when opportunity comes along and you hesitate because you're still acting from the past. You experience karma when love approaches you, but you push it away because your samskaras expect some form of abandonment. You experience karma when money arrives and you unconsciously sabotage it because your samskaras, they expect struggle. Karma repeats until you become conscious. Once you become conscious, karma transforms. And this is the part that almost every manifestation teacher misses. Karma isn't broken through imagination. Karma isn't dissolved by writing affirmations. Karma dissolves when awareness enters, the moment where the pattern normally takes over. Karma changes when you choose a different state in the moment where you would normally collapse. This is why identity is everything. You don't fix karma by fixing the external situation. You fix karma by fixing the identity that responds to the situation. Here's the simplest way to see it. Karma is the loop Samskara is the trigger. Identity is the response. And manifestation is the outcome. If the trigger stays the same and the response stays the same, the outcome, guess what? Stays the same. If the trigger stays the same, but the response changes, then the outcome rewrites itself. This is how you break karmic circles in real time. And here's the empowering part. You don't have to destroy your samskaras to transform your life. You only need to become aware of them and respond differently. When the old emotion arises, instead of collapsing into fear, you breathe. When the old insecurity rises, instead of feeding it, you stabilize your state. And when the old belief whispers nothing ever works for you, you recognize it as a pattern, not as a truth. When that old identity tries to pull you back, you stay in the new state long enough for the cycle to weaken. This is how samskaras dissolve, not by force, not by denial, not by anything else, but refusing to repeat the emotional signature that just kept them alive. And let me tell you something I think is fascinating. Modern science is beginning to confirm truth that the ancient Vedic text taught us 5,000 years ago. Neuroscience tells us that most of your behaviors, our behaviors, are driven by neural patterns formed by repetition. Now, the ancient Vedic text, they call it samskara. It's different words, same mechanism. If you look at neuroplasticity, your brain rewires itself when you repeat a new state consistently. Not when you force it, not when you meditate just once, but when identity changes. A new identity, literally, it creates new neural pathways, which means new karma begins to form the moment that you stabilize into a new state. And if we jump onto the quantum side, I'm sure you may have heard of the observer effect, where scientists, they fire particles through two slits. The particles, they behave differently when they're measured compared to when they're not measured, which basically means observation changes the outcome. Now, for thousands of years, ancient Vedanta has said consciousness shapes reality, which is the same. Today, physics says exactly the same thing, but in different language. If you look at quantum entanglement, which is where two particles can be separated by any distance, and they can behave as if they are actually connected. You change one, and the other responds instantly. Vedanta says consciousness is non-local. Everything is connected through the same underlying field. Again, different language and same principle. Now, none of these experiments prove manifestation in the way that YouTube influencers like to talk about it. But what they do prove is the universe is not the hard, static, purely physical machine that we once believed it was. Consciousness matters, observation matters, and state matters. But the biggest scientific confirmation is this: your nervous system cannot produce abundance while operating in survival mode. When you're in fight or flight, your brain cannot recognize opportunity. Your creativity shuts down, your decision-making narrows, and your emotional range, it just collapses. This means that your state literally determines what you are capable of seeing and responding to. And this is exactly why manifestation mechanics focuses on state first, identity second, and action third. Because until the state stabilizes, nothing else sticks. Now that you understand the theory, let's bring this into your daily life, because theory doesn't change karma. Information doesn't dissolve samskaras. Identity does, state does, conscious coherence does. And it all begins with the smallest possible moments, the ones that people overlook. So here's your method, okay? Step 1, awareness. You cannot change what you avoid seeing. Most karmic patterns survive because people just live on autopilot. They react automatically, emotionally, unconsciously. The moment that you become aware of your reaction, the karma in that moment begins to dissolve. So here's how you do it. The next time that something triggers you, it could be a text message, an email, a bill, a delay, it could be a memory. Notice your first internal reaction and observe that feeling without collapsing into it. Don't become part of it. Observe it. That pause is the beginning of karmic transformation. The ancient Vedic texts say the moment of awareness is more powerful than the momentum of the past. And they're right. When you pause, you create a space where the old samskara, it cannot automatically take over. That tiny moment where your destiny changes. Step 2 is state regulation. There's a scientific reason for this. I'm not going into it just now. But place your hand on your belly. Slow breathe. Let your stomach soften. This tells your nervous system that you are safe. Safety is coherence. Coherence is the environment in which manifestation becomes completely possible. When you regulate your state before reacting, you stop feeding the old samskara. You stop giving energy to the old identity, and you start creating more karma of the same kind. Step 3 is identity selection. In that moment of calm, now you're there. Choose who you want to be instead of who you've always been. This is not imagination. This is not forcing pictures. This is shifting into the emotional tone or the version of you that no longer carries that old pattern. If the samskara is fear, then you choose steadiness. If the samskara is lack, then you choose sufficiency, enoughness. If the samskara is rejection, choose worthiness. And if the samskara is pain, choose ease. You don't need to feel it perfectly. You only need to stabilize it long enough for the old identity to just loosen its grip. Step 4, daily consistency. Karma is built through repetition. Karma is undone the same way. And you don't need to be perfect. You only need to be consistent. Every time you respond differently, the old pattern, it weakens. Every time you stabilize your state, the identity, it shifts. Every time you choose coherence instead of collapse, the karmic direction changes, your circumstances will follow. And step 5 is micro actions. Karma often doesn't change through one big moment. It changes through a series of small decisions that align with your new identity. So if it's wealth you're focused on, you take one small, financially healthy action. If you want love, take one small, emotionally healthy action. If you want stability, then take one small, grounded action. These actions anchor the new identity into physical reality. And the universe responds when consciousness and behavior point in the same direction. And step 6 is your evening recalibration. Before bed, before you sleep, return to the identity that you've chosen that day. Not with force, not with pressure, just a simple remembering. And this is how you imprint the new state into the subconscious. This is how samskaras dissolve during sleep. This is how karma bends towards your new path of alignment. This is your method. The awareness, state regulation, identity selection, daily consistency, micro actions, and then evening recalibration. This is how you rewrite your life without fighting your past. This is how you dissolve samskaras without reliving trauma. This is how you redirect karma without spiritual bypassing. This is how you manifest without fantasy. This is how you become the version of yourself that life can finally respond to. Now that you understand the mechanics, the ancient truth, the modern science, and the practical steps, I want to leave you with something a little bit deeper. Something that sits beneath every technique, every state change, every moment of awareness. You are not the sum of your actions. You are not the weight of your karma. You are not the patterns that you inherited from childhood or previous lifetimes. You are not the person that you used to be. You are the consciousness that can choose again. The Vedic texts say that karma is only powerful when you are unconscious. The moment that you wake up inside your own experience, the cycle begins to break. The ancient teachers were very clear about this. Karma shapes the conditions that you enter. But your awareness, but your present awareness shapes who you become inside those conditions. And that is the message behind manifestation mechanics. You don't need to fight the past. You don't need to erase anything. You don't need to earn your way out of karma. You only need to stabilize the identity that you want to live from. And the universe, the field, God, responds to identity, not history. Your samskaras, they do not decide your future. They only describe your habits. And habits can be changed. State can be changed. Identity can be changed. And karma can be redirected. And when you start choosing a coherent state on purpose, when you stop collapsing into old patterns, when you regulate your emotions and you return to your chosen identity again and again, reality shifts around you. This is not philosophical. This is not symbolic. This is the mechanics of creation. This is how I healed when I was told it was too late. This is how I rebuilt my finances when I was absolutely drowning in debt. This is how I manifested love after decades of pain and betrayal and repeating patterns. This is how I changed my life. And this is how you can change yours too. I'm going to end it there because I've got a call to be on in a moment. If you found this valuable, if you're ready to break your karmic patterns, and start today, perhaps also share this video with someone who you know is stuck in the same cycles, someone who thinks that their past defines their future. This might be exactly what they need to hear. And if this is your first video with me, then go back and watch my other videos. Watch them in order. You know, I designed them in sequence so that each one builds on the last, and you'll understand manifestation completely differently once you see the whole picture. My name is Dion Goldsmith. This is Manifestation Mechanics. You are not bound by your past. You are not limited by your patterns. You are far more powerful than you've been taught. And when your identity becomes coherent, reality will have no choice but to meet you there. And maybe I'll meet you in the next video. That's all today. I've got a coaching call. I'll see you.